Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk about some issues that I had with the justice system, errors and corruption in the legal system. So what I'm going to start with is, the first thing is police. So my charges were in Brampton, PO region of Ontario. So pretty much, I'm just going to dive straight into this. So I came into contact, so I'm aware of how police documents work, police procedure, police policy, the Police Services Act, things of that nature. So what governs them, public policy, things of that nature. Just like, so if a police officer were to ever speak to you, you have the right to ask for identification, badge number, name, and things of that nature. So now, when police do illegal things, I don't believe they should be protected by the law. I think that their information should be made public so that so other people don't fall victim. The reason I say that is because that's a very dangerous occupation, right? So as you know, if a police officer has the right and the license to carry a firearm, which could cause which could alter somebody's life, injure them, give them a life-altering injury, could disable them for the rest of their life, could cause serious injury or harm to people in the public, and a firearm doesn't choose the age of a person that could make a victim. So if a police officer recklessly discharges their firearm in a public space like a mall and ends up hitting a 3-year-old girl who's eating with their family and kills them, they obviously have to be held responsible, which in most cases they are not, right? And that is why we have to know their name, their badge number, things of that nature. These are public employees. This is a public sector. I cannot imagine how any of that information should or would be private, and it's a very serious matter to me, just because, as you can see, I'm a person of color. I was a Army applicant. I was in the process of the Army recruitment. I was invited for testing. I was 27 years old. I'm currently 28 years old. So in 2020, I was 27 years old. I did not have a criminal record until this age. And it was very disheartening to see how the police treated this situation. As you can see, I'm a person of a darker skin tone. I believe racism was definitely a factor in this situation. So pretty much, to go back to not veer too far from the story, so I was pretty much arrested, taken into custody for a mischief and uttering threats, in which I always obtain my disclosure. I obtain all my court information. I obtain any other information that's related to this. I get a what is called a police background information. It's not your criminal record, as you can see right here. So this says PO Regional Police. It's a letter from the PO Regional Police. And what it is, right here, is a request for information. So not only do you acquire your disclosure, your court information. So now your disclosure is all police notes, any video recording, audio recording during the arrest, excuse me, or interaction with the police, things of that nature. So anything and everything to do with your case. So now the second thing is court information. That's different from disclosure. They do not include that in disclosure. So now court information is the dates you've attended court, who the crown was, who the judge was, who your counsel was, or if you're self-represented, the dates of your appearance, and any other information. So pretty much it's more so like the court proceedings of your case. So the disclosure is all information relevant to your case, and then court information is all information relevant to your proceeding once it's put in the court of law. So now, so what we have here is, and the third one is freedom of information, or like the information request. So this right here is a request of information. So now my issue is that, so Unfortunately, I've experienced this process. I did not have a criminal record until 27, currently 28. I'm not a criminal. I own multiple businesses. I've worked for companies such as UPS, handled mail, abided by federal mail policies, things of that nature. I have multiple companies, businesses registered with the CRA, things of that nature. I've been employed my entire life. So just because I have tattoos and I'm dark skinned doesn't automatically make me a gang member or a criminal. I'm sure the police don't see it that way though. Even though I've met good police officers who invited me to join the police academy, things of that nature. But there are also police officers who stereotype me automatically because they see that I'm of a darker skin tone. So due to that, even though in contradiction to me being law enforcement, having a career in law enforcement, I've worked as a private Ontario, or I've been licensed in the province that I live in, which is in America, would be the state. So for example, in California, that's the state. Over here is Ontario, it's Canada. So in the province of Ontario, I was a licensed Ontario private investigator and security guard. So this right here would be a private investigator and security license in the province of Ontario. So if you're a security guard in Ontario, you would have one of these cards, right? That means just like your driver's license, you would have to go into a center, a government regulated provincial center, and fill out you'd have to do an exam to be licensed as a private security and investigator. And private investigator and security guard. But you would also have to complete a course. So you pretty much complete your course online, and then you're eligible to come in and write the test at the test center at the same place as your driving test center, excuse me. So pretty much you would have to go in just like your driver's license, you write an exam, and then after that you would be able to get your license and then become a security guard or private investigator in the state or province you're licensed in. So yeah, so pretty much as I was reviewing my information, I noticed that the arresting officer, who was a female, a Caucasian female, she had put her name down, she had followed policy, she had done everything correctly. So now there was another officer who was in charge. So there was an officer who spoke to me and ultimately collected my DNA through court order, but for some reason he felt that his name was not necessary on these documents. So now the handling of DNA itself is very sensitive. It's personal information, sensitive information that is somebody's DNA. It could be reproduced and placed at scenes of other crimes. It could be mishandled. It could be inappropriately handled. If this person is a corrupt official, they're receiving bribes or some sort of incentives, or they're participating in corruption, or they have a thing out for this person, a personal issue between the person that could be very dangerous, right? So the handling of DNA is handled through a third party. So I inquired into this occurrence with the division where the officer is allegedly from, or has identified himself to be from, at which point they have told me that a third party, police officers do not attend for DNA collection. A third party does, which I would believe to be true, because why would a police officer handle DNA, right? It would obviously be a third party. So you can understand that forensics, they do DNA. So the ironic thing is that so this being Peel Region Police, there is a Toronto Police Service. So the Toronto Police Service attended, they left a business card, they identified themselves as forensic services, they came in uniform, and excuse me, so pretty much they identified themselves, came in uniform, provided a badge number, name, business card, left documents, official documents, things of that nature, with their names and things of that nature, obviously at their division. So pretty much they did the right thing. They conducted themselves according to policies, guidelines, and the code. Whereas this officer did not. He came in plain clothes, dressed just like I am. Plain clothes, no name tag, no emblem, no police badge, no police identification number, none of that stuff. And then he didn't feel it was important to even leave his name or a document identifying himself. So if a random person walked in, it would be the same exact thing, right? So I contacted the division, to which I found out that a third party would be collecting DNA, not a police officer, according to that division. And the person I spoke to, the officer I spoke to there. So now I was concerned for my information, the handling of my information and my DNA. So I contacted the RCMP, which is the governing body for, so they have a RCMP data bank where they house DNA or they store DNA. So I contacted them to let them know that this had occurred. I continued to contact the local police branch to find out if my DNA was stored properly and who handled my DNA. Ultimately, so in this letter, which I paid for, a police information, so they tell me that to a partial extent they could release information, but they can't release all the information for the protection of the parties involved. So as a police officer, I can't imagine what protection you would need in a case such as this, that's a misdemeanor and is complete before the courts already. And if you had not done something wrong, why would you need to mask your identity as a police officer? You're a public employee, you're a civil employee, you're not some type of criminal. You're not, I don't know if you are a criminal, but I'm not sure why you would need to be anonymous in a situation like this, right? If you have a court order and you're a police officer, why would you need to mask your identity unless you're doing something wrong? So that's my concern. So once I contacted them, they were able to disclose the officer's information to me. They disclosed his badge number, name, division, and rank to me. So that, even for a peace of mind, you definitely wouldn't want somebody in plain clothes handling your DNA. And then the division informed you that they're not even supposed to be present, which I've complained to the OIPRD, which is the Ontario Independent Police Review Directors, and I've spoken to a investigator and a detective there. So that does eliminate the mishandling of DNA and things of that nature, which is a concern for anybody, right? I'm sure that nobody will want their DNA, one, to give their DNA to anybody, and two, once you do give your DNA to a government place or a court order, that you definitely don't want it to be mishandled by a person who could possibly leave the force at some point, who could be fired for other misconduct, who could be under investigation for corruption. You don't want your information to be vulnerable information that falls into the wrong hands, right? Or gets placed at the wrong place. So yeah, ultimately, I'm not sure why they tried to not provide the information, because this is not a federal case. I'm not a violent offender. I'm 28 years old. I've never been convicted of a crime until 27 years old, at which time the charges that was brought before the courts in Brampton or Peel Region was mischief and uttering threats. So mischief and uttering threats is pretty much a misdemeanor, or in the States that means like a non-felony, so it's not a felony crime. Yeah, so it doesn't stay on your record and things of that nature. So I can't understand, like, the person acted like it was like a high risk federal raid where they raided a high ranking gang member that was in possession of drugs and firearms and things of that nature and was running an operation, which is not the case here. So I don't see why. Maybe it's a bored person who has nothing better to do, something of that nature. I'm not too sure. But even then, you'd have to follow policy. So to not follow policy that would probably be something illegal, and that's something that needs to be investigated. But I did ultimately get the name and badge number of the officer, which was Detective Constable Jimenez of Peel Region, and I have filed a complaint. But yeah, so for some reason, this detective felt that he could be in plain clothes, not present a badge, not present a badge number, not identify himself, and ultimately attend for DNA collection, and then not put his name on any single document, which I'm not sure what he was thinking. Maybe it slipped his mind to do so. Maybe it slipped his mind to follow policy and protocol. maybe he felt he was going above and beyond his regular duties, and he felt he was doing some type of good deed. But just to be safe out there, yeah, because it's not something to be taken lightly. It's definitely disappointing to see police don't follow policy and protocol. Very disappointing to see that we pay taxes to have people like this hired who think it's funny to collect DNA for people when they're not assigned to that task, as well as not putting their name on paper, not identifying themselves as police, not being in police uniform, things of that nature. There's absolutely nothing humorous about that. There's nothing excusable about that. Maybe some people get into senior positions and then they think, oh, I could just bypass this, which you obviously reached a higher position, a senior position, and been on the force long enough by your ability to conduct yourself according to the code of conduct, right? And the Police Services Act, not by breaking the law. If you broke the law this entire time, then you probably wouldn't have made it as far as you have. So even to be on the force, I'm pretty sure that you wouldn't want to repeat those mistakes, right? I would hope that you wouldn't want to repeat those mistakes. However, I have filed, as you can see, I've requested the information of obtaining my court information, my disclosures. I've filed a formal complaint with the OIPRD, which is the procedure of I've notified the division where the officer works at that this has occurred. I've filed a report with them. I've also filed a complaint with the OIPRD, things of that nature. So I've covered all my bases as far as reporting this and making the police force aware that this has occurred. And hopefully that will be investigated and some type of disciplinary action is taken. Maybe the officer has to undergo training and undergo retraining and maybe be refreshed on what police policies and procedures are and the code of conduct. Maybe he needs to review those things, and maybe he's been in the force so long that it doesn't matter to him, because just like somebody who works at a place where gloves are required for the handling of material, then after they work there for 5-6 years, they're like, oh, screw these gloves, I'll just not wear these gloves just because it feels better, right? Things of that nature. So just like if a Subway worker was just handling your sandwich with their hand, and you just seen them put their hand in their pocket and then pull their hand out, no glove, and then just touch your bread and then touch the cheese, touch the lettuce all by hand and put it on your sandwich, you would probably complain to the corporate office, right? It's the same situation. So so the other thing is transcripts. So there's 4 important things, right? So there's the disclosure. That means the disclosure is given to you by the court. So that's the first thing. So the first thing is disclosure. That you could get from the court, you could get from your lawyer. If your lawyer does not give you one, you could request it from the court and get your disclosure. Second thing is court information. You have to also request this from the court staff, from court administration. And then there's a third thing, which is transcripts, and then the one that I already showed you, police information. So 4 things, right? Disclosure, court information, police information and records, and 4th, transcripts. So these things do cost money. So disclosure is given to you by the court at no cost. Court information is given to you by the court at no cost. So now transcripts and police information, police records information, these 2 things will cost you a fee, but they're important documents to have. Transcripts are a written or transcribed document of all your court attendance. So everything that you've said in court, everything the judge has said in court, everything the crown or the prosecutor has said in court is all, and your lawyers or anybody else who has spoken during your court appearances will be a record of the date you attended, the courtroom you attended in. It's a record of your attendance, but not only that, it's also a record of everything that was spoken and discussed. So everything that is said in the courtroom is audio recorded, then it is typed out on a document that is a transcript. So now Police information is what you request from. You have to go into the police station, fill out a form, and pay the fee, and then you're able to obtain all your police documents. So those are important documents. All right. So the next thing, in my experience, just because I want this to be a reference for my lawyer or in legal proceedings as well. So this is what a litigation, civil litigation, or a lawsuit would look like. So this is the response letter in a lawsuit. So now, so this isn't the actual. So once you fill out a lawsuit form, it's a bit different. It looks like an application. So it looks like a job application. You have to fill out your personal information, the complainant's, the plaintiff's information, and then the defendant. So the person that you are pursuing civil litigation or filing a lawsuit or suing. So pretty much you have to fill out that information and then fill out a synopsis of what happened. So you have to type out in your account of what took place, or your lawyer would do that, or whatever the situation is. So now, the reason I have lawsuits is that I have, so in my disclosure for a certain case, there is information that is not mine. So for example, the person, not example, or from my case specifically, in my disclosure, once I review my disclosure, it states that a person that is not me. So I have no co-accused. It is simply just me. No other persons are involved. Individuals are involved. So pretty much it shows that a person from a different region, not even in the region that I'm charged in, but somewhere else, is included in the information. Maybe they have the same ethnical background or the same region. Maybe they're the same skin tone. Maybe they have a similar sounding name, for whatever the reason is, which is still unacceptable, because that's not an excuse for police error, right? You don't just randomly go charging people and be like, oh, it was you, then be like, oh no, it was not you, I'm going to charge the other person, because that would render the police useless, right? If the police just ran around, if somebody stole a pizza slice from Pizza, then you go to the gas station across the street and arrest everybody at the gas station, that would probably not make sense, right? Just because you would probably want to focus on the people in the store and do an investigation in the pizza store rather than the gas station across the street and arrest everybody that's currently pumping gas, which would probably be ridiculous and cause outrage. Just to give an example. So pretty much they put some random persons, an uninvolved random person with more severe charges, more like dangerous charges, because as I mentioned, I'm a non-violent offender. I do not have any violent offenses. I've pretty much had misdemeanor charges like mischief and uttering threats. As far as this case is concerned, these are misdemeanor charges, like fail to comply with bail, things of that nature, non-violent offenses, once again. So pretty much the other person though, so they put this as the background of myself. So the background of the accused, criminal history, then they put a information of somebody who had stolen cars or did a grand theft auto, took the police on a car chase or something of that nature, I'm not sure, stole a vehicle somewhere in a different region. So that is a very serious crime. To say that somebody has a failed to comply with bail, that means they did not comply with their bail or release order, which is way different from carjacking a person and taking police on a car chase and then things of that nature, right? Very different, very different. I'm not too sure if you'd be able to differentiate the two, but I'm pretty sure any human with like common sense would obviously be able to read two different names and two different sets of charges, right? So if I got failed to comply, my name is, let's say, Patrick James, for example, and then there's a Wallace Christopher somewhere else who's stolen 4 to 5 cars. It would be a heavy, very, very clear ability to differentiate the two, right? Now, I'm pretty sure as a police officer, your eye for detail and your keenness to detail should probably be a factor, because how do police make such simple errors, right? So due to that, I have filed a lawsuit against the police organization or the police service in that region for submitting this information. I've contacted the Toronto Police Service, and inquired with the officer in charge of complaint to the OIPRD once again. I've made the courts aware that this information is incorrect. I've made the judge aware. I've made the court aware, and things of that nature. But these repeat things against me is very concerning, that a person of color has to have somebody else's information placed in their criminal background just to enhance their criminal background, because as I mentioned, I have a non-existent criminal record. So to enhance my criminal record before the judge, and then to make it look like I'm a person who steals cars, who carjacks people, and it's not even my information. So it's completely false and fraudulent information, and the people should be charged for lying under oath as a sworn officer of the court. And instead of upholding the law, they're pretty much breaking the law by being by committing acts of perjury and submitting false and fraudulent documents, which is also concerning. And I'm not too sure why they would do that, why they would not correct their information. I contacted them. I left a message at the police station. I filed a lawsuit. I emailed the person, complained to the OIPRD, the Ministry of the Attorney General, made the court aware, the judge, the Crown Attorney, the prosecutor, everybody aware that there's wrong, fraudulent information in my criminal background, which is not even myself. The person's name is completely different. Their address is different. It's a completely different individual. So it's not even a typo. It's they simply just they copied and pasted somebody else's information into mine, somebody else's crimes into my court proceeding, and they think that's fine, which should ultimately have the case, which corrupts the case and should have the case withdrawn, just for the simple fact that there is fraudulent information proceeding in the court, right? If it was brought to the right person's attention, and or the judge actually reviewed the disclosure, they would simply look at the Crown and be like, why is there information for a different individual in here? Because you're compromising that person's information as well. You don't know if that person is a confidential informant, if that person is somebody who's provided information in other cases. So why would you associate a criminal with somebody who's accused, right? So why would you put two accused together and their cases are completely different? So what if this information was used and somebody was harmed? So why would you disclose personal information of a criminal or a person that's accused of a crime and then pass it on to other people? It makes absolutely no sense. And it could put people in harm's way once again. So now the other concern is that, so I had a justice of the peace. So there's judges and justice of the peace. A judge most likely handles federal cases. Their tasks and duties are a bit different from a justice of the peace. So I had a justice of the peace. My cases are not federal. They're misdemeanors. So pretty much I've had the same justice of the peace who handled a guilty plea for 2 misdemeanors. So 2 non-felony charges. Then she also handled a bail hearing and another, so 2 more. So a bail hearing and then another matter that was not related to these. So these are 4 separate matters, unrelated, and she's handled all of them. So now, besides that, she's also handled 2 probation hearings. So she ultimately gave me probation, and now I tried to schedule a probation variation hearing 2 times with her. The first one, she informed me that because she was the sentencing judge, that she was that I had the option of speaking to a different judge. So she asked me, do you want me to preside over your matter, or would you prefer a different justice be assigned to your matter? Because I was the sentencing judge. So I said that the first time I had told her that it was fine that she preside over the matter. I'd given her over 30 exhibits, which was brought before the court, all government documents. So probation completion certificates, government, Ministry of Health, Ministry of the Solicitor General documents. I've had 2 probation officers removed. So I had the letter from the ministry, or the governing body, that sent me the governing branch of government, or the branch of government that's governing over this probation order. So the Ministry of the Solicitor General. So I brought forth 2 letters from the ministry, a certificate of completion, Ministry of Health documents. So all these documents were counted as exhibits on the court. So there was over 30, probably 32 to 36 exhibits in the court of just official government documents, which was not taken into account by this justice of the peace. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt and allow her to handle this matter, in which she showed her ignorance. So the probation officer ultimately said, "Oh, my computer is down. I cannot read the document to you." So at which point I provided her with the document. I emailed the document immediately. I said, "This is the document he's referring to," as well as the Crown attorney, who said, "Oh, I'm currently having technical difficulties. I do not have the document in front of me," to which I uploaded the document again. So to go off of fact-based document based things, evidence is probably your best bet, not to just show favor to court staff, right? Which would probably be an abusive process, would go against the Justice of the Peace Act, would probably be in violation of judicial conduct, code of conduct, things of that nature. So I ultimately did order my transcripts for this matter, and then complain with the governing body that investigates the conduct of Justice of the Peace and judges. And I also did complain to the courthouse. I also complained to the Ministry of the Attorney General and the Judicial Council, which will ultimately be reviewing her judgment, right? Because she's handled pretty much 6 matters now. Any judge or justice of the peace can handle one matter for an individual, because after that it would create a prejudice. In the court of law, it's supposed to be fairness, right? And non-prejudice, or adhering to the code of conduct in the court and set forth by the Judicial Council and the Justice of the Peace Act, right? You wouldn't be in violation of that. So if you were racist, if you were ignorant, negligent, these are things that would be investigated by those governing bodies. So yeah, so the justice was Justice Capanisha at the Brampton courthouse, and pretty much what she did was she handled the force. So she handled a guilty plea, she handled a bail hearing following the guilty plea. So that was for 4 separate matters, all unrelated. Then she handled 2 probation hearings after assigning a probation order, being the sentencing judge for a probation order. She was the probation variation hearing justice on both times. So the second one, when I requested a different justice of the peace to preside over the matter, she said that that was not, she quoted a random code under subsection whatever, section 37 whatever, and she quoted some random law in the criminal code that doesn't even adhere to this, or doesn't even apply to this. And she pretty much just thought that I don't read, and that I was not familiar with the code, which had nothing to do with the judge or the justices of the peace act. She probably should have quoted the Justice of the Peace Act rather than the criminal code, and something that's irrelevant to the situation, just to be ignorant and negligent. But she ultimately said that I cannot have another justice of the peace because she's the one that assigned this sentence. But in the first hearing, she had said that you have the option of having a different justice of the peace preside over this hearing, and that is your option. So the second time following that was after I had complained about the first one. So I believe that she was acting in reprisal in revenge for the complaint against her following the first probation hearing, and also the concern that I had that she had handled 4 matters for one individual, which would obviously form a prejudice or form a record of involvement with a person. So if you were to repeatedly handle a matter for a different person and each matter is unrelated and you handled 4 matters for a person, you would obviously form an opinion and prejudice against the person, especially after your first account with the person being one of being a sentencing judge or accepting a plea deal from this person or a guilty plea. So now you think this person is guilty of crimes. You don't know the circumstances. You don't know if this person agreed to even plead guilty or if they were forced to. You do not know the circumstances behind that. I believe that would definitely get you in a lot of trouble as a justice of the peace or a judge. And that investigation will probably reveal that further down the line. So during this time, during COVID, I was held in a correctional facility, and the procedure there is, so just like they fall under the Ministry of the Solicitor General. So now the Ministry of the Solicitor General is the Department of Corrections. Formerly the Department of Corrections is now the Ministry of the Solicitor General. So pretty much, so if you have any concerns about the treatment or any injury sustained during your incarceration, any rights violations, anything of that nature, there is the governing body, the branch of government that you contact, which is the Ministry of the Solicitor General. So now when you contact them, you inform them like, okay, I was at this institution during this period of time, during these dates. My information is this is my inmate information, and these are my concerns, and they will investigate your concerns. So for me, my concern was that one, they had misspelled my name. That was the first concern. So any documents, so like you have to understand that when you're incarcerated, you receive legal documents, things of that nature. So how do you even make an error on a person's name? So do you purchase real estate, and for an example, do you purchase real estate and then put somebody else's name on it? No, right? You would obviously have to double check the ID, double check any documents pertaining to the person's name and get the person's name correct. That would be the first issue. That plus discrimination and racism, because why would you not spell a person's name right? Unless you had some type of mental deficiency or some type of error with yourself that doesn't, you have, not to be offensive, but you have dyslexia or something of that nature. How do you be in a position where you're handling you're a government employee and you're handling inmates and people who have to attend court and receive legal documents and you misspell their name? How is a clerical or administrative error like this even allowed in a place like this, right? So as you see my ID, like if they misspelled my name, that means I wouldn't have a license, right? So if your license misspelled your name, then that's not you, that's an individual, that's a different individual. The other issue is that in my documents, they had predated it. So I had received a infraction for which I was incarcerated in 2020, but the date on it, and I've never been to prison previously or any type of institution previously in my life before. I do not have a criminal record prior to this. So it says 2019, offense date 2019. So how could I be incarcerated in 2019 if it's currently 2020, right? So they make clerical errors, administrative errors. So there was one that said, one of the documents that said Sergeant K. Chartrand, and this person had dated the document to a previous year. So I looked at the document and it says the date is 2019 and it was currently 2020. So I noticed that they make administrative and clerical errors, to which I asked them. I put it on a request form and I made the ombudsman aware, and I said that they're making administrative errors with my file. They're making clerical errors. They're misspelling my name. They're putting incorrect dates, things of that nature. And I made them aware because I want all my information to be correct. When you're dealing with something like the justice system, Department of Corrections, Ministry of Solicitor General, Ministry of Attorney General, courthouses, facilities, lawyers, anything that has to do with the court of law, you want everything to be exact. You want everything to be accurate and truthful. You do not want your name misspelled. You don't want a date to be off. You don't want anything You don't want any inconsistent and incorrect, fraudulent, or false information, because if you acknowledge, so if I signed a document acknowledging the date, that means I'm partaking in fraud. Because if I notice that the date is 2019, but the current year date is 2020, and I sign it and I acknowledge that this happened in 2019, but they go look in the records and I was not incarcerated in 2019, then that means I committed an act of fraud if I knowingly signed the document. So to correct that, I had filled out multiple forms to correct the spelling of my name, correct, because even for incarceration records, you cannot misspell a person's name. So that means a different person was incarcerated, not me. So how do you explain this? Because I didn't type. I don't come to the jail and then type in my name and print out the documents. There's somebody that's assigned to do that job, right? So you would obviously, it's not the inmates sitting there typing out names and stuff. You don't just, it's not like you go to the library and log into the computer and be like, oh, this is my library card information. It's not that type of situation. This is a serious situation, right? And the mishandling of documents could often lead to a lot of further complications in the procedure, delays and unnecessary things where the person has to, for me, it has cost me punitive damages, lost wages, time away from my businesses. It has hindered my application or my recruitment with the Canadian Forces, being law enforcement, doing private security and investigative services, other things of that nature. I've had to file lawsuits or civil litigation at my expense, which can become costly. Things of that nature. It could also hinder your progress in completing things such as probation, complying with your conditions, because if your name is misspelled and you show a police officer your name is misspelled here, they're like, let me see ID. So if the document doesn't match your ID, they're going to be like, this isn't you. And you have no control over it, because you have to make these people, the government, aware and be like, listen, you misspelled my name, please correct it. And if they do not correct it, and then the police officer has to see your ID and your document are two different names, they're going to be like, what are you trying to do here? You get it? So it gives you further complications just because somebody else mishandled your information, which is out of your scope, right? Which is out of your realm of control. There's a lot of flaws here with the justice system, the government, the branches of government. These are governing bodies that should have absolutely no error. Like, even if I go to Starbucks and they say, oh, what's your name? And I say Dylan. Then they put Lily on the cup. And I say, listen, my name is Dylan. Please correct the information. And then they scribble that out and then simply just write Dylan. There you go, right? Even Starbucks is capable of correcting mistakes in information. So if somebody likes, if Starbucks employees are able to correct your information, I'm pretty sure the government should have absolutely no qualms, no concern, no discrepancy to correct your information. This should be done, because I didn't come here and change my name or anything. I need my name to be spelled correctly for these documents, right? In a court proceeding for a criminal proceeding, how do you misspell somebody's name? How do you enter somebody else's information? How do you do these things? So if I go to the doctor and then I do a blood test and then you give somebody else's results to me, I would probably sue you, right? So how does that make sense? If I go do a blood test at my local physician's office and then you tell me ultimately that, oh, you have kidney disease or heart failure, but you're looking at somebody else's chart, that would probably render everything useless, and I would probably sue you for medical negligence and medical malpractice, right? And I would complain to the governing body to have your license removed for frightening me with such a with a different individual's test results, which is inaccurate, right? Just the same way. So these people need to take their job a lot more serious. So if you're a government employee, you're trusted with doing certain duties, and if it's okay to make an error, but once you're made aware of the error, do not be negligent and racist. Correct the information. It's that simple. Don't blame the person who's the victim of your fraud and doesn't want to participate. Simply just adjust the information, edit it, correct it, and refile it. If it's a daunting task for you, maybe you shouldn't be working here. If it's such a difficult task for you, maybe you should leave your job and allow somebody else who's capable of doing these things to do these things. That's why people pay taxes. That's why people trust the government, right? Because these are not simple tasks and they need to be handled. Even administrative tasks need to be handled correctly, and that's the issue. Ultimately, I can say that this has caused me a loss of wages. I haven't been able to be employed due to these mishaps, these errors, these delay in proceedings, incorrect information, things of that nature. As I mentioned, up until the age of 27 years old, and I'm currently 28 years old, I've relied on my income from employment from my businesses that I've registered legally, and things of that nature. I'm not a criminal. I do my taxes. I pay taxes. My taxes are up to date. My businesses are registered. I have a record of employment since the legal age of employment in this country. I have no criminal record up until this or the previous year, 2020. And I definitely want to appeal my charges because I was held during COVID and not giving a fair trial. I was not given adequate documents due to staff shortage. I was not able to use the phone to call my lawyer. I was not able to receive documents from my lawyer. I was not able to receive court documents. And I was held during COVID where multiple, even the staff were confirmed positive cases of COVID, and it's all over the news. So how do you even how do you even proceed with criminal proceedings at this time where they're withdrawing high profile cases, but they're holding people like me of a darker skin tone for things like fail to comply and mischief, uttering threats without even being proven in a court of law, which is very unreasonable, which is very irrational and just racist and negligent. To know that the person does not have adequate access to counsel, because I had a legal representative for each matter. But the only issue was that my lawyers could not visit. One, because of COVID restrictions, visits were completely canceled for a period of time. Two, they could not bring my documents to me to review. And due to shortage of staff, I could not even access the phones to call my lawyers during business hours to have a discussion with my lawyers about any of this. So I believe that all these were done in error, and to be 27 years of age with no criminal record, right? To be a army recruit and in the process of completing the army or the Canadian Forces recruitment process, to be in law enforcement as a licensed provincial Ontario private security and investigator. To do these things, these alone, and to be a UPS employee. So as a UPS employee, you handle personal information, sensitive information. You have to abide by federal laws in regards to mail handling, things of that nature. So to be trusted and a person of integrity and honesty, and a person who has been employed with a record of employment, and has done everything by documents and by the legal guidelines. So how does a person randomly, just out of the blue, during the height of a COVID pandemic, end up with a criminal record, right? So these are things that needs to be questioned, needs to be investigated, inquired into, and not just shrugged off. I've filed multiple complaints with the OIPRD in regards to the police, which is a governing body that investigates police conduct. I've been contacted by them. I've had investigations completed by them, and they did a very good job. And I've also got detective contacts who have told me that if there's any further occurrences to report it to them so that they could investigate, which is a very helpful resource and tool, and I'm very happy that I came across this resource. And the Ministry of the Solicitor General has been very helpful in helping me complete this wrongful probation sentence, where they continue to try to give me a hard time. The probation officers are obviously human. Sometimes they have a hard time. They take it out on the people who come to probation. They assume that everybody's a criminal if they're on probation. They don't really care too much for the personal life of a person on probation. If I have injuries and I cannot come in, things of that nature, if I have COVID symptoms, whatever the situation may be, they're not concerned about any of that. Due to that, I've had to contact the Ministry of the Solicitor General and complain, and ultimately have my probation officer removed for their conduct and behavior, inappropriate behavior. There's other things like the Judicial Council, Ontario Judicial Council, or the Justice of the Peace Review Board, who investigates judges and justice of the peace, who may some judges are so ignorant that they might just tell you shut up, right? They might ignore all your rights, your charter of freedoms and rights, or your rights and freedoms, and that everybody has to abide by in this country, right? Or the amendments. So these type of things and the charters, and they might just tell you shut up because they think nobody's listening, right? And they're so outdated and live in a prehistoric time of racism that they don't take into consideration that the audio is being recorded, that there's court staff who are not racist and do not tolerate racism and will report this themselves. Court clerks and transcriptionists, or the court clerk, the person typing, other court staff, right? Even the crown attorney. The crown attorney is present in the court. They might not even tolerate racism. So even though they're the prosecutor, they might go ahead and be like, oh, the judge said something inappropriate to this person, right? Things of that nature. So sometimes you do come across racist, ignorant, negligent judges and justice of the peace that may be breaking the line. You should report them. Do not be afraid to report them. I've reported multiple justice of the peace who have resulted in the termination of their employment. So it is not something to be taken lightly. You should not shrug off racism or negligence by justice. If a justice threatens you or does not allow you to access your rights, your right to counsel, they try to obstruct justice, they try to aid the crown or the prosecutor in illegal means, or you believe they're participating in corruption, they're racist, whatever the situation is, you should definitely report them immediately and then follow up to make sure that there was an investigation into their conduct. You should order your transcripts. You should keep record of your dates and get your court information and provide that. So that way, even if they don't sign in that day, that is a violation against the Justice of the Peace Act. That is also a violation of the code of conduct set forth for members of judicial, like the Ontario Court of Justice, right? The Court of Justice Judicial Practice. Besides that, this has been a very disappointing experience. I've had to file lawsuits. I've had to do multiple complaints against various levels of the justice system, from judges to police officers to crown attorneys, file lawsuits, things of that nature, and they've all been handled appropriately. And I've liked the results so far. People have been investigated. People have been terminated from their employment. So they've had a termination of employment, disciplinary hearings, things of that nature. And I'm thoroughly satisfied with how these complaints were handled and investigated. And I hope that these mistakes are corrected and that my name will ultimately be vindicated of these accusations and these wrongful convictions to which I don't believe I had a fair trial or the access to fair legal counsel due to COVID and uncontrollable circumstances, right? I don't control COVID. I don't control staff shortages. I don't control who comes into work. I don't control government employees making clerical errors and administrative errors on documents and things of that nature, or racism or negligence. I do not control these things. So I hope that these individuals are brought before the Court of Justice themselves and prosecuted for perjury, for filing false documents, for fraudulent document abuse of process by the Crown, malicious prosecution, things of that nature. And I do hope that these lawsuits are granted and heard before a court of law, rightfully so, for the trouble that I've suffered. I've not been able to attend employment, education. I've lost wages for the past 2 years. I've lost income from businesses that were registered. I've suffered personal suffering, emotional trauma, and things of that nature. And not only that, but as a tax-paying citizen who had, as I mentioned, who I will repeat again and be redundant because it's very necessary, is not a criminal, was in the process of joining the Canadian Forces, the recruitment process, was law enforcement and a licensed Ontario security guard and private investigator. Just because of my skin tone, out of nowhere I get a slew of charges, and get ignorant judges and ignorant police officers who are racist and ultimately try to force convictions upon me without the right representation, without access to fair and adequate counsel and a fair hearing. I believe that these things should definitely be addressed and reviewed. I don't think these things should be shrugged off. I don't think it should be pushed off to the side. I think these things are staring you in the face and you need to address it. And hopefully they will be addressed. The thing is that mishandling of information is definitely a concern. If there's mishandling of information by a government employee, how do you proceed on these things? So if something as serious as a criminal accusation where I've not been proven guilty, and even before we go to trial, you have errors in the documentation alone, how do you proceed? It does not make any sense to me. So I've made the courts aware and the judge has been notified. So I'm pretty sure that maybe the crown here, the issue is that the crown here was somebody I had complained against who was a former justice of the peace, a judge. So pretty much once I complained against them, they were terminated from their courthouse, and then they are now a crown attorney, and I believe that they are acting in revenge for me complaining against them and them ultimately being fired as a result of that as a judge, and then to become a civil employee in a courthouse, be a courthouse employee where you were once a judge, must be embarrassing to your reputation and must be very hard to swallow and come to terms with, right? And I believe that's the reason why they're being so negligent and abusing the process and violating my charter of rights and freedoms. Hopefully this is addressed and this person is removed from my matter and I'm given a fair trial under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms according to the Criminal Code of Canada and the Justice of the Peace Act, the Judicial Council, the Code of Conduct, the Ontario Court of Justice, things of that nature. Hopefully this is brought to the attention of the right person or the right organization and they look into this and these things are ultimately sorted out, which is inexcusable because how do you proceed with these things, right? Like once you see it, if I come register at your office for a family doctor and my name is misspelled or my OHIP card, which is my government health card, is not available and I misquote the numbers, you would be billing somebody else, right? And I'm pretty sure you would not appreciate that and that person would not appreciate that. So this same situation applies. You do not give somebody a driver's license with the wrong address on it. You do not give somebody a health card with somebody else's information. You do not give somebody a social insurance number with incorrect numbers. So that would be fraud. That would be fraud. If I were to give you a social insurance number as a government employee with somebody else's social insurance number, that would be an act of fraud. So I think these people should be held accountable for fraud, for negligence, for racism, for violation of charter rights, discrimination, abuse of process, malicious prosecution. I believe that these people should be held accountable and they should be charged for perjury. They should be charged for fraud. And that's what I believe would be equal fairness and the upholding of the law in this country. Nobody should be above the law just because of their occupation, just because you're a judge and you go around driving and drinking and crashing into people. You shouldn't be exempt from the law just because you're you're an employee of the law or the justice system doesn't mean that you should be exempt from these laws. We have the Criminal Code of Canada for a reason, right? Everybody has to abide by this, not just the common civilian, but everybody, including police officers, judges, doctors, everybody, no matter the occupation. They should all abide by these laws. Nobody is above the law.